difficult to find a boyfriend, wouldn't it? If you only had half a day once a fortnight, you'd never meet anybody. But Mum met Dad through this other man calling at my aunt's house, and he brought his friend, which was my father. But how they conducted a courtship, I don't know, because, as I say, Mother only had half a day once a fortnight. At that time, Dad was living in Plumstead with his mother and stepfather.
Oh, right.
And a brother. And he'd just come, when he came out of the Duke of York school, he was 14. So by that time, his mother had married a second time. Well, she'd lost her husband when Dad was 2, and now Dad was 14, and she had also married a Mr. Brown. No relation to the other Browns at all, but this was a Mr. Brown that she'd married. Well, Dad didn't like him at all. It was his stepfather, and Dad had another brother, Uncle Fred. He made quite a good marriage. He married a school teacher. Aunt Annie was a teacher. And then he had a sister, Ada, who wasn't born when the father died. Consequently, she was blind and deaf. That was Ada. She was blind and deaf. And my father was a very kind man, wasn't he? Kind man. And he was very outgoing, really. And he said he went out and bought my Aunt Ada a new piano so that she could learn to play the piano where she was blind and deaf. He was like that. And he was a very generous man, but he didn't have much money to be generous with, but he was generous with what he had. So he came to live in Plumstead with his mother and father, stepfather, and of course he had to find work, and there was work in some of the council offices somewhere. So he had to go and see a man who had a lot of money. I forget what he was called, not Squire, but something like that, in Plumstead, to see if he could get this job. So the man looked down the register of electors, and he said, "Your father didn't vote for me in the last election, therefore you can't have the job." Dad always was so disappointed about this job. But that's how it was in those days. Terrible when you think of it. I mean, fancy your Paul going to a man and saying, "Let's see, who did your father vote for last time? You can't have that job." Terrible. Right. Can you imagine Ben? He'd tell him what he thought of him, wouldn't he?
He would, yeah. And politics and everything else.
Oh, but times were hard. Mum used to be in service and she had £6 a week, and at Christmas the lady of the house would give them material to make themselves some new aprons. But they were happy. Yeah.
Oh, very happy, yeah.
Yes, I wish you'd be, well, you used to you remember my father, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
He used to tell funny tales about his times in the Duke of York school, and also about his times when he got a job then after that with some people called Rabbit. They had a shoe repairing place in Woolwich, and Dad used to have to go round on a bike to deliver stuff, and he used to have to wear a cap and it had rabbits written on it. And the Dad used to say, going around with a cap with rabbits all round it. I don't know how they saved up enough money to get married, but they did. And they had a nice flat in Plumstead Common Road, actually, didn't they? Funnily enough, some friends we have, darling, can you possibly sit up a bit? You'll go funny if you ever sit with your head down like that. Some friends we have at the church, Wilma and Norman, they're a nice couple. They're not as old as we are, although he was 80 the other day. But they can do more than we can. They've got a car still. But he was talking about when they were first married, and he said we had a flat in Plumstead Common Road in a place called Acacia Terrace, which is right opposite Plumstead Common. Rather nice. They were quite big rooms, weren't they, I would think, big houses. And I said, I believe that's where my mother and father first lived. So I said, I can tell you because I've got the certificates of, well, the bills of when they bought furniture and where it was sent to.
Oh, right.
And I looked it up and it was 370 Plumstead Common Road. And they said, well, that was the place where we first lived too. Is that funny?
Gosh.
So Wilma and Norman lived in that flat years and years after that. It's funny though, isn't it?
Bizarre, yeah.
Yeah.
Very strange.
And Dad, I think you've seen the bill, probably, haven't you, for my mother and father's first time after marriage. They went to a shop called Burt's in Woolwich to buy it all. And they've got the bill, I've got it. And I think I've got copies of it. And it came to about £28 or £30 for a bed, a sofa and 2 chairs,
And
Carpet.
wardrobe.
all sorts of things.
Wardrobe.
Yeah.
Wardrobe, dressing table.
Yeah.
Came to about £28 or £30. And that would have been a lot of money because Dad would have only been earning about £3 a week. You think of it, wouldn't he? Perhaps not that. People didn't get big wages, did they? I was considered to have quite good money when I first went into the civil service. I had £6 a week. And people would say, my goodness, isn't that a big wage? She was.
Well, I was earning £6.40 when I started work a week.
Well, there you are. But you were an apprentice, weren't
I
you?
was an apprentice, yeah.
Uncle Len was an apprentice, and he only earned 7 and 6 a week. So what did you earn as an apprentice, Brian, in halls?
Yes.
How much?
6 and 8.
6 and 8? Is that right?
Yeah.
6 and 8 pence a week
Yeah.
as an apprentice. That would have been about before the war, wasn't it? 1936.
Right.
About 1936. Well,
Yeah.
Len was some years before you, and he only earns about that much as an apprentice. But then the money got on. As soon as you
That's right.
started to earn money, you went and joined the Air Force, didn't you? That was the end of that. But he did finish his apprenticeship, didn't you?
Yeah. No, 1 year short.
1 year short.
Yeah. I went in the Air Force.
1 year short.
Air Force.
What was the apprenticeship for?
Hmm?
What was the apprenticeship?
What was it? Engineering?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Refrigeration.
Was it engineering?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't think why, because you didn't like it really, did you? Did your father think that was a good thing? I can't remember. They weren't very pleased when he went and joined the Air Force because he needn't have gone. Your father, my dear, had a mind of his own. And if he wanted to do it, he'd do it. And you walked out one day, didn't you? The war had just started, hadn't it? And he went sort of past the Labour Exchange and they were calling for men for the Air Force. Well, I thought that would be a lot better than staying in halls for the next few years, so you went and joined the Air Force. You went home and told your parents, didn't you? They were very pleased. I just imagine your father. It was too late then because you'd already signed
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
the papers.
Couldn't do anything about it.
Well, I think well, actually, it was quite good because you had already finished your apprenticeship, had you, just about?
They got it here.
This is very nice coffee, dear. No, we do have it, don't we, in the mornings? We have this coffee. It's the pigeons out there, you see that? They're on that box.
Oh, yeah.
No, Dad was naughty, really. He was a bit like Ben in a way, I suppose. He had this, doing this apprenticeship,
Yeah.
and you knew your father wouldn't be very pleased. Why didn't you go into the bakery business? Why didn't you go into the bakery? Wouldn't that have been better?
Yeah.
I think Dad knew somebody, didn't he? Was it some cousin? He was called Ian, wasn't he? Ian somebody or other. I expect your dad thought that you would rise up to be the director of Halls. It didn't work out like that, did it? Dick Powell worked at Halls, didn't he?
Yeah.
It's a very good company, wasn't it, in those? Didn't John work there too?
Yeah.
Worked at Halls, didn't he, for a time?
Yeah, John did.
Yeah.
Yes. Have they gone now, Halls? Has that all disappeared?
Horse
I
something.
don't know, I think so, yeah.
Well, you used to see their name on
Horse
lifts.
something.
Used to see their name on lifts and escalators, didn't you?
Very old firm.
Yes,
Very old firm, yeah.
yeah.
Very
It's all
good
gone
firm.
now, though. Like everything else in Dartford, that's a dead town, isn't it? It wasn't. No, well, actually, Dad did much better for himself joining the Air Force at that time,
I enjoyed it.
and then going on to aero
I enjoyed
engines,
it. Yeah.
which you enjoyed much better. We've got Charles coming on Tuesday, Charles and Harriet Rees. Well, Charles sits here when he comes, and Dad sits there, and he brings you aeroplane books, doesn't he,
Sorry.
to go through. But
Yeah.
Charles worked he was in the Fleet Air Arm, wasn't he, during the war?
Sorry.
And he
Okay.
Okay.
did different engines to you, didn't he? Wait a minute.
Right.
Now that stands over there.
Yeah, it's okay.
Thank you. Anyway, and so they have a good afternoon talking about aero engines. Did you work on these? Yes, he worked on the Sea Kings, were they? What were they called?
No.
Merlins.
Yeah.
He was, this
Oh,
fellow that's
yeah,
coming
yeah.
on Tuesday, Charles. He's going to be 89 this next month. Charles is. He's still nipping about.
He's
Freezing around.
That's my
Maybe.
uncle's in. Just
Oh, right.
didn't know that. I thought he was the Air Force.
These fellows.
Yeah.